Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever loves me will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words. Yet the word you hear is not mine, but that of the Father who sent me. I have told you this while I am with you. The Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send me in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I told you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. You heard me tell you, I am going away and I will come back to you. If you love me, you will rejoice that I'm going to the Father, but the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you this before it happens, so that when it happens, you may believe." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The Holy Spirit will teach you everything and remind you of all that I told you. In case you notice, I wasn't here for the past 2 weeks. I was on a pilgrimage with a group of, there were 35 of us traveling from Rome. We went to Assisi, and then we went to the Holy Land and visited Galilee, all the areas we hear in the Gospels and the Old Testament as well, and then we culminated in Bethlehem, the place of the birth of Jesus. A very emotive pilgrimage in which we reflected a lot on the life of Christ, but it's like trying to compact the whole liturgical year into a few days, very condensed prayerful time with the Lord, which had its test. But every time that I travel to the places, the holy sites of the church, which is not the first time, but it's an encounter with the God of history. We are united in the same Holy Spirit, not only in space, as the liturgy is celebrated here, it's also celebrated over the world, but also in time, with all the saints, with all our ancestors, 2,000 years of history of the life of the church. That Jesus speaks about today in today's gospel, he says the Holy Spirit guides. He'll teach you everything and remind you of all that I told you. And when we visit in these sites, like if you were to another parish, you see different things, but also see how historically the presence of God is real, historical, real presence that has been with these people for the last 2,000 years. And geographically moving, we go to these beautiful basilicas and cathedrals, which are superb. We celebrated Mass the first day we were there in the Sistine Chapel, not the Sistine Chapel, but the one at St. Mary Major in Rome. And it's a beautiful chapel, which is about the size of this church probably. But it has a beautiful altar, marble everywhere, iconography, everything. I remember that was the one of the basilicas. Another one we went to celebrate Mass was the Church of the Transfiguration on top of Mount Tabor, which is one of my favorite churches of all time, to celebrate Mass there. We celebrated Mass in the center church where popes have celebrated Mass there. So to be able to be there in that location where Jesus was transfigured before the apostles was a true experience for all of us who were there. Beautiful celebration. But all those remind us that it is the same church, it is the same Spirit that continues to guide the church through millennia, 2,000 years plus, that the Holy Spirit has been guiding the church. I wanted to reflect a little bit on that and something about Pope Francis that he said this morning in regards to the Holy Spirit. In English, we don't do justice to the Scriptures many ways. But one of the words we use here, we see in the translation given to us, the Advocate, the Holy Spirit. The word advocate, it has a political connotation in our mind because it's someone who represents you before someone else. The advocate, like a lawyer, is your advocate before a judge. But the word that is traditionally used most is paraclete, which is one of those words that come from the Greek that we don't like it because we don't know what it means. And that's unfortunately for our culture. In our English language, if we don't understand something, we want to change it. But the word paraclete, as the Holy Father was reflecting this morning, is more precise because it tells of the Holy Spirit who accompanies us. See, the Holy Spirit is not an energy like a laser that comes to us and tells us randomly certain things, but it's the Holy Spirit that guides the church, moves the church. I think in the world of individualism, for the past century or so, we had socialism at the beginning of last century, who was invading the culture, and now we have individualism as we begin the new millennium, which is the complete opposite. As individualistic as we are, we try to think of God and my relationship with God as something personal and individual between me and God. There's obviously a dimension of our relationship with God that's only always subjective as well. My relationship with the Lord, my encounter with Christ. There is that reality which we cannot deny. But individualism, in the abuse of the term, is between me and God alone, without the church. If you ask me what is the greatest challenge the church faces today, I'll tell you it's individualism. It has been tainted by the idea the Holy Spirit is going to work with me and no one else. Somehow we tend to think that we have monopoly of the Holy Spirit. And that detaches us from the community of the believers. That we think is something personal and individual. You don't go to church because it's between me and God. I can pray to God anywhere. The problem with that is checks and balances, and there is also no intention. That's not what Jesus intended. I saw a slogan on one of those beautiful things that people put in Facebook. Some of those nice pictures, that I don't have that quote precisely, but it says something to the fact that the God that we believe in does not like religion. That's the Beatles in the 1960s. Jesus Christ came to institute a religion. No doubt about it. I went to all the places that he was. I read the gospel. There is nowhere that Jesus came and said, you just got to have him in your heart and that's it. He came to institute a church. He came and the church did not come out of nowhere, ex nihilo. The church came from the people of the Old Testament, the 12 tribes. That's why it's so precise in the second reading today, as we read the book of Revelations. That we see the context of the 12 apostles as being the continuation of the 12 tribes of Israel, always in the context of the community of believers. That's how God works. That's how the Holy Spirit works. Agnosticism and individualism in our culture tend to think that it's between me and God. Whatever I feel is the Holy Spirit. It's not. Sometimes we're just crazy. Sometimes we can just hear voices. That's problematic. What the church does is that discerns the Spirit to see whether this is God's will or not. And I invite you to read again the first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, because this is how the mechanics of the church worked then, and this is how the mechanics of the church work today. A question came up at the time in Judea that they were instructing people as to what are the requirements for the church to welcome pagans. We knew that people who were circumcised in the Old Testament, they will come into the church by baptism and that's it. They just required that baptism. But what about pagans, the Greeks? How will they welcome into the church? And there were some people who went ahead of the apostles, who were not with the apostles, who went and disturbed the peace, they say. In other words, they began to create divisions in all these places. The church began to be divided, teaching different things. So what do the apostles do? They come together in what is called the Council of Jerusalem. It's the first council. The last council was the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. But the church meets in council. It comes together and deliberates. Sometimes bishops get together and they come to agreement about things. And they deliberate. So this is what happened in the first reading. The apostles and the elders, in agreement with the whole church, decided. That's how the church works. It goes against individualism. Because in idea, we want to make our own church. We want to be our own popes. Dictate our own dogmas. Pick and choose what we like and what we don't. But the Holy Spirit works through the apostles, and they get together, the elders, that is the priests, in agreement with the whole church, decided to choose representatives, and they come to a decision. And then the decision, they wrote a document, which is known as a letter, an epistle, an encyclical. Even today, the Pope writes encyclical in the same spirit of council. And then he sends them to Antioch, Syria, and Cilicia, of Gentile origins, to try to give them guidance as to how to become Christians. And the guidance is spelled out there. I don't want to put attention to the guidelines as much as the fact that the church needs to convene in order to make decisions happen. Because that's how the Holy Spirit works. The Holy Spirit does not pick people randomly to do their own thing. That's why we have so many Christian religions, is because somebody disagrees with the pastor and they open a new church. In the Catholic Church, we don't have that problem because we're united with our successor, that is the bishop. And we work with him in deliberation with our pastors. Why did I want to talk about that? Because you haven't noticed, we have a campaign going on. Have you noticed? Have I talked enough about it? The decision to build a new church, my brothers and sisters, was not out of whim. It didn't come up one day, one morning I woke up and said, I want to take another cross because this one is not big enough. It is a deliberation that has taken years. The parish has taken years. That's how the Holy Spirit works. And I can assure you, by the work of the Holy Spirit, by the work that the parish has done, the tug of war that goes on in discussions, deliberations, meetings, parish council, synod. Remember 2015. We as a parish have been deliberating about this. And we decided that what the church needed to do in order for us to pass on the faith to the next generation is we need to move. We cannot grow where we're at. One of the videos that becomes most popular on Facebook, one of my most popular videos, not the most popular. I got 20,000 views. I was like, okay, that cannot be my sister. It's just by a simple phrase, it starts like a plant in a pot. And apparently that became, somebody wants to make a t-shirt out of that. Because the parish, are we going to grow? Are we going to have something going to happen? Are we going to collapse? Are we going to move? No. The faith will continue. But in order for the parish to grow with the town, we need facilities. We need more space. We need buildings. If we do not move, the parish will not grow. People will just go elsewhere. There will be a parish in Corona someday. There will be a parish in Vail someday as well. There are parishes that people already going to Tucson to enroll their kids for catechism. The church will continue to grow, but our parish will not grow. If our parish does not grow, I do not see us having a parish in 25 years. It's a reality. It's not so much a need. But this is not something that just pastor wants, pastor gets. I wish. That this was a dictatorship of sorts. And I'm not the government, so I cannot print money. You know? We rely on the support and sacrifices of the faithful. To this day, 198 families have pledged, bringing us to 1.651. 1,651,000 and a few cents. I want to know who gave us those cents though. But we're there, we're halfway, we're 54%. But we need to get there soon in order to achieve this. Is it doable? Yes, it is doable. But it's something that has to be worked with everyone. I know everybody is thinking about it and praying about it, and at the end of Mass we'll think about it more. But I want you to pray about this at Mass, during Mass today. And I want you to join us after Mass for breakfast. It's on me. Or brunch. Well, it's on the parish, not me really. Brunch and a discussion after Mass. When you come out, can clarify all your questions that you may have. So how can we get all of you on board with this task? We have achieved so much with 200 families. I think we can reach at least 1,000 families of the 1,700 that we have registered. I think we can do it, but we just need the discernment of everyone. So please keep us, put ourselves in the patronage of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who filled with the Holy Spirit did what God asked of her. So we got to ask the Lord, Lord, what is it that you want from me? So that I may say, let it be according to your word. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.